covers the charting portion of the continuous improvement process. This is what I've done over the course of the entire school year. This demonstrates a bar graph that covers the passing percentages for the 6 weeks, and I've done this on every 6 weeks grades. So what we have is each class period has a color, and it goes by unit test. And so this is the passing percentage that they've had, and as you can see with the last 6 weeks grade, they've really stepped it up, so I was impressed with that. And above the class periods, it breaks it down even further into A, B, C, and not passing. And also we have a class average. And what I found helpful about this tool is that the kids come in after each test and they check it themselves. They've gotten used to it, and so they're initiating the conversation and I don't have to, which really helps, and it furthers the process. Also, by me knowing whether the kids just barely passed or if they're solid in it, they have A's and B's, it lets me know, do I need to review and go back, which is helpful when it comes to the tax testing, or we're fixing to have the end of course exams, and when I have these posted around the room, it will really let me know what unit I need to focus on when it comes to review time and which class period got it and which didn't. So this is what I've done, like I said, every 6 weeks grade, and once you do it frequently enough, the kids will start to initiate it, and it's also kind of fostered a little bit of healthy competition. And also, this is what I've done for my own reference material, is it's passing rates, and I do this at the end of each 6 weeks grade, and it notifies me out of all of my students what the passing and not passing rate is. Then it breaks it down by a class period, and so this is another tool that has allowed me to kind of assess myself, and then the kids also can assess where they've been. And as you can see, I've tried to add any type of accomplishments that we've had that the kids can kind of get excited about, or that I can look back on and say, okay, we did do this, we are moving in a positive direction. And then I did this, like I said, I did it all school year, and then I got to thinking over winter break that this is great, I like it, it's by class period, but when it comes to the individual student, that's what's most important. A kid isn't going to get on his report card, hey, you were in a class that had 95% passing. It's going to show, did this child master it or not? So that's when I went to these individual folders, and each child received one. And in it, it holds all their exams, but what I created was a chart and in each box, they filled out what grade they got. They write down the test number, they write down 2 goals or successes or what they need to work on. It was kind of their choice, but I told them that it had to show some type of reflection on their grade. And then they wrote down what goal they wanted on the next test. And so as we're going along, they're able to continuously calculate their average. And then, as you can see, whenever they've retaken a grade, I slashed it out and gone in and changed it for them. And so anytime they open up their folder, they know exactly what they need to retake, they know exactly where they stand when it comes to the averages, and that's really opened up communication. And there have been times where, I'll write a note on there, just a message of either encouragement or constructive critique, just to open up those doors of communication. And then the part that I really liked, that I decided to do, was after they filled in the squares with their test grades, is they calculated their average. And so what you have here is a line graph, and I raised the bar to 80% because I thought, 70, that's okay, that's great. But 80% or higher is where we're really shooting for. And then it has test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, test 5, so as we're going down the list. And these red dots represent the individual test grades that they've had. Then in purple is their test average, because keep in mind, it's the test grades influence the average, but it's the average that's going to be on their report card. And so, like you can see, after these grades, you see that their average is going down or up, and it just opens up those communications. And the reason why I decided to do the line graph was kids were continuously coming up to me and saying, hey miss, why did my grade drop 10 points? I don't get it. And I look at the grade book and I'm like, well, that's because you scored a 20. And they weren't understanding how a low grade can really drop their average significantly, because they fail to realize that a 70 to a 20 is a 50-point difference, whereas a 70 to a 75 or an 80 or 85, whatever they're trying to get, that's only a 5 to 15-point difference, or maybe they're shooting for an A, but still that's only a 20-point difference. So they're better off taking care of that really low grade, retaking it. So again, it's kind of trying to influence them to retake it and take care of business, rather than being satisfied with that low grade and continuing on and fighting it with more C's and B's, maybe a couple A's. And so I think that it built a better number sense, and that at any time they're able to look at this and they're finding their average. And also, as you can see, that whenever they did get rid of a low grade, they slashed it out, and I put in their retake grade, or they would put it in, and then we would determine their new average. So as you can see, after this individual retook their grade, their average went from a 51 to a 76. And so again, it opened up, communication, and the student knew at all times where they stood. Then also, I was given a tool right here that I just discovered, and from another teacher. And what it is it's another way of doing the charting, and it's a different way. It's perhaps more cost effective. It's perhaps more efficient than the bar graphs. And what it is you will label the assessment, and by class period, so it's similar to this, people will chart in and dot in or color in their average. So you pass this around the room, and each student charts their average. And by having it on their desk, I think that it'll allow them a moment to reflect. However, I do know that, when you hand it to kids, those first couple of kids, their dots, their coloring squares are going to stand out. And so 2 suggestions if you decide to do this approach, or if you're considering it, instead of, this charting and having you do it yourself and, spending time there, if you want the students to do it their own self, I would start off with a student that's confident and is strong in their grade, rather than have, the first dot be a student that's low in their grade. Also, you may want to, with a pencil, mark some kind of like fake grades to disguise the first couple people, and just kind of put some dots in there. And then when everybody's done with it, you go in and erase the marks that you put. That way, it's kind of more of a disguised scenario as to who does what. But this is just another way that I said could be more efficient, and it could be more cost effective than the bar graphs. But whatever you do, there's tons of suggestions out there, and there's tons of ways you can do it. But whatever you do, I just encourage you to really analyze the data, not only for your own self and where you stand, but so the kids know where they're at. And also, as a math teacher, they still struggle with number sense. They still struggle with figuring out their average and realizing that, a really low grade, of course, is going to bring their grade down really low, but they always seem surprised. I don't know. They always seem surprised. So anything that you can do to lessen the surprise and to build them a better, number sense would be great.
This is a way that I used to chart grades this year. I chose to use more of a spreadsheet format and chart the grades more individual rather than by class. When I started doing this, I was really surprised at the reaction from the students because they have access to their grades on GradeSpeed, and so I just had the assumption that they were keeping up with their grades all the time. But once I started doing this, I realized that wasn't the case, and they even told me that this helped keep their grades in front of them a little bit more than even GradeSpeed. And so I used more of a spreadsheet kind of format. It's actually another gradebook program. I didn't find the flexibility I needed in GradeSpeed to be able to print out the individual assignments in ranked order the way I wanted to, and so I had an old gradebook program that I used. It's something that's easily transferable to anybody that wants it just by using a flash drive. So if it's something you are interested in, let me know and I can get that to you. But the little bit of downside is I had to type grades into another gradebook program. But to me, there was enough upside to that it made it worth the time that it took to do this. And so what I would do is we graded by objective. Mr. Riley and I both used this method this year. We tested by objective, And so every time we posted a summative grade or put a grade in grade speed, we would post one of these on the board. And so it has the student's ID number here and the ranked grade order over here. And we drew a red line there at the 70 mark. And so the students could easily identify whether they were, above passing or below passing, the percentage of passing students here, and then the average for the assignments at the bottom. And so students could easily walk in. The first couple of times I would have to tell them there's a new grade posted on the board, but after that, I didn't even have to say anything. I would walk in and there would be a herd of kids around and looking at it and trying to figure out where they were and where they stood. And I got a lot of good feedback from it. The really competitive students, they were always wanting to make sure they were at the top and ahead of their friends. But then I had other students that, were struggling a little bit. And, I heard a couple of students say, well, I'm making progress, I'm getting closer to the red line. And then other students, said, well, that red line scares me, I want to stay as far away from it as I can. So I could tell, they were conscious of what their grades were and making efforts to do better. The other thing I like about this is when I give a retest, then I can just post that retest. So, these two objectives right here, the students did pretty good on this objective, 83% passed. This was not quite as good, only 62%, but after the retest, I can just post the retest grades right next to it, and you can see there's fewer kids below the red line now than there was before, and they can immediately see the increase in the passing rate and the increase in the average. So I like that you can put that next to each other, and they can make that comparison pretty quickly. I gave a survey to my calculus students that I use at the end of every year, but I changed a couple of questions since I changed a couple of things I did in class, and one of the questions I put on there, did this make a difference? Did this motivate you? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes, for some of those reasons that I previously mentioned, but there was enough of a positive response about it that it's something that I plan to continue next year as well.